And I can see somebody's raised a hand. We're not going to take questions, comments as such. If you've got a question, can you put it in the chat? We've got a couple at the moment, so I'm hopeful that in the minutes that remain, we will actually be able to deal with these questions. So if the person who's wanting to ask a question can put that in the chat, we'll try and get to it as well. So if I can ask Jackie and Lucy to join me, as it were. I know they don't physically, I know it's the technology that does it. We've got a couple of questions that have come so far, and the first one is, how can we relate to people without using diagnostic terminology when they use such words to describe their own experience, for example, saying I'm depressed? Lucy, do you want to kick off with your thoughts, and then I'll come to Jackie?
Very briefly, if I answer that from a kind of clinician professional point of view, I mean, obviously I never went around telling people what words they should and shouldn't use about their experiences, but it would always be my practice to have a conversation about those words and what they mean, and suggest that there may be other ways, and ask if people knew about those, and if they're interested, discuss that. So you have to start with where the person is, of course, and what they know. But I personally think that clinicians ought to be opening up possibilities to the people they work with, you know, while remaining, you know, while respectfully using language that makes sense to the person, but making them aware that there are other ways as well.
Thank you. Jackie, would you like to comment on that?
I mean, I guess I would be curious about what that meant for the person. You know, if somebody tells me they have, you know, I have schizophrenia, that doesn't really tell me anything about them. So I'd be curious about, well, what does that mean for you? And I mean, depending on the circumstances, I might say, well, you know, some people have different ways of seeing the world. And, you know, I think it very much depends on how much somebody's identity is kind of submerged in their diagnosis. Some people find these conversations really, really threatening. Some people are delighted to have somebody raise an alternative. So I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I'd certainly, you know, I'd want to feel where that person is and what this means to them. And that's probably why I'd start with, what does that mean for you? Both how do your difficulties manifest, but also what does it mean to have a diagnosis for you?
So in a sense, trying to move away from a label as an explanation for what's going on, to people themselves being able to say, well, this is what's happening to me. So not just, I mean, I liked before when you said, rather than what is wrong with you, what has happened to you, but also asking people not just what's happened to them, but how do you feel, how are things affecting you in your day-to-day life? That kind of approach, would that be?
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you know, if Lucy had more time, she would have gone into this. But you know, the thing about schizophrenia is it's really unreliable as a diagnosis, and that people with a diagnosis of schizophrenia may actually have lots of different experiences and problems. So it's not really telling me what it means to be you with that diagnosis. And I don't know how you feel about that diagnosis. Is it something you find helpful? Is it something you find oppressive? You know, I get emails all the time from people saying, please help me get rid of this diagnosis. It's ruining my life.
Yeah, which I think that's helpful, because it sort of brings us on to some comments, not so much questions, but comment that we've had, where somebody said, I've heard of these ideas before, but I keep looking at the cyclical nature of psychoses and the way antipsychotics, by which I assume that means antipsychotic medication, moves someone back to their old selves, and therefore this stops the person who's put the question in ejecting the medical model. And what they're saying is, I'm not supporting the promotion of antipsychotics, but at times they're all we have right now. And then a further comment has been added by the same person saying, identifying issues of paranoia. And they've said, whilst it may be easy to construct a narrative where loss of trust becomes useful, antipsychotic drugs reverse the paranoia, and then the person trusts again. And these things leave me with questions about the relational model. Lucy, would you like to have a go at that?
Okay, so I don't think anybody I've ever met is against the use of psychiatric drugs for some purposes, for some people. They can undoubtedly be helpful. But I think what we're sold is a myth that they treat illnesses. Now, there's never been any evidence to support that. So I actually think the word antipsychotics is quite misleading. I mean, I know people use it, and you can use what language you like, but the suggestion that these drugs target something particular about what I probably wouldn't call psychosis, because I'd want to unpick it, as Jackie's just said, but this is not a targeted treatment like antibiotics treat your chest infection or the bacteria that cause your chest infection. So I think we need to understand the uses that drugs can have within a non-medical model is what I would say. So Joanna Moncrief is a psychiatrist who's written a lot about this. And I think she's rightly, in my view, said these drugs can calm you down, can take the edge off your distress, can help you get through the day. They don't treat illnesses as such. They're not in themselves a long-term answer. And the longer-term answer, I think, has to be exploring the meaning of these experiences, because that's not only about getting back to where you were, it's about really there may be something to learn from and an opportunity for growth here. And simply using drugs is not going to kind of allow those possibilities to happen.
Thank you. Jackie, do you want to respond briefly on this? Because I've got one more question I'd like to try and get in.
Of course. I mean, I guess the clue for me was in the question, that this is cyclical. And for me, that would suggest that that way of thinking about things isn't actually working, because I don't think that problems have to be cyclical in nature. And that in effect, that's one of the consequences of medicalizing problems, is that people do become kind of chronically unwell. And again, there's lots of kind of evidence to support this. If that person's interested, I would recommend one of the books that I've put in, which is Living with Voices, where lots of people in there struggle with things like not feeling safe and paranoid. And the other is Robert Whittaker's work. Lucy just mentioned Joanna Moncrief, who's done a lot of work about medication, but I'd also recommend Robert Whittaker's work. And he talks about this kind of process of where we start thinking that the drugs are going to solve it. And actually what we create is somebody who's kind of ends up as a revolving door patient.
Okay, thanks very much.
I haven't really spoken directly to that effectively necessarily, but
yeah, no, that's great, because we are getting towards the end, but there was one more question that's been put in the chat. How can we use these new ways of thinking to support people who have lost their liberty because of their diagnosis? Lucy, do you want to?
Oh, big question. I mean, I have to say that I think we need to get rid of the diagnostic model first, because that provides the false justification, in my view, for locking people up and treating them in a way that no other group in society is treated. Now, there are some situations where people are not able to make sensible decisions for themselves, I mean, both within and beyond psychiatry, but I don't think we should be basing those decisions on the completely false belief, in my view, that they have a mental illness. So
okay,
capacity, rationality, not mental illness, is my view.
Thank you. Jackie, did you want to say anything on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if somebody's currently being detained, I would be careful about sort of introducing ideas that might make that a much more painful experience for them. I mean, again, I'd want to sort of be guided by that person, but potentially what I'd consider doing is getting a second opinion from a clinician that might share some of these ideas. That's something.
Okay. Great, thank you very much indeed. Can I say a heartfelt thank you to all of our speakers, Rosa, Lucy and Jackie. I hope that's both given you more information about Peertalk, but it's also given you more, as I said, one of our other aims, as well as having groups for people to go to, is to inform and equip individuals and communities to make a positive response to mental health issues. And I hope that we've done that today. We're extremely grateful for the time that Jackie and Lucy have given to us. As we've said, and as John's putting in the chat, this has been a free event. That means that doesn't mean that it didn't cost anything. It did cost something. And if anybody is in a position to give us a donation to help with the cost of the event, we've got the link in the chat, and if you've got any final comments, we'll keep the chat open for a little bit longer so that you can put your information in there. I think this approach that Peertalk takes of empowering people and people empowering each other is really, really important. It's what in our evaluation came through, that it's that connectivity with other people, with ideas that come from people that give them support and make a real difference in people's lives. So with that, I would just again encourage you to look at what we do. Please promote and support our work. We'll be sending out information after this. We'll be sending out the slides. For those of you who work in the health service who might want to look at setting up a group in your area, we'll have information about that. If you're not in that position, we would still like you to promote and support our work. We have Twitter feeds, etc. And we have ways, we send out regular newsletters every month from Peertalk. You can sign up for those, it's on our website. So thank you very much, everybody. We got up to quite a large number. I can't remember what it was now. I did write it down at one point, but we've had a great number of people attend. There is a recording. We will keep make that available to people. So those who signed up and weren't able to be with us exactly at the time, I hope that they enjoy the recording of this and get something from that. Thank you for all your comments. And with that, I'll wish you a very good afternoon and hopefully an opportunity for you to get outside and experience some of this lovely sunshine that we're having at the moment. Thank you and goodbye.